basically what my article does, it looks to how public opinion responds to negative consequences of policy, in this case military casualties during military interventions, because you would expect, of course, that the public doesn't like negative policy effects and that governments might be punished for that. So what I basically did is, based on findings in American literature, I taken a look to other countries, mainly European countries, and I checked for 11 OECD countries in the period 1990 until 2014, what the effect of military casualties actually are on the public opinion polls, or basically voting intentions for governing parties. And what we actually see was very interesting is that there is a so-called rally around the flag effect. So actually the public responds positively, in a positive sense, to military casualties, but only in the beginning of the intervention. And this is a really interesting finding because it was not so much the treatment effect of military casualties in itself, but more time was relevant. So timing is really of the essence. So we see that in the beginning of a military intervention, the public really rallies around the flag and supports the governing parties. But if the intervention takes too long, say, on average 4.5 years, we see actually the effect turns around to a negative effect. So this could be explained by also the findings that was earlier done on more micro level, done by, for instance, Gelpi and Fever, where actually success matters. So what my hypothesis would be for conducting further research is maybe after 4.5 years, people don't really know why they're in an intervention anymore. So after 4.5 years in Afghanistan or 4.5 years in Iraq, maybe people start to wonder what actually the end goal is and how do we reach the end goal. And then you can see actually a turning point. So basically, it's in conclusion that it's not so much the negative policy consequences that have an effect on public opinion, but the interaction effect between the negative consequences of a policy and the timing, which is really of the essence. So that's basically, in a really short nutshell, what my paper was about. Well, actually, what's the most interesting finding in terms of policy consequences, that especially in political and military elites, there is this really hard, grounded assumption that military casualties always have a bad effect on public opinion, which is not the case. However, it does lead to certain policy consequences, and especially for military personnel on the ground. We see a very proliferation, you might say, of force protection, which actually leads to soldiers that having to deal with back problems, neck issues, because they have to carry so much stuff around to protect them. But it can also make you very vulnerable on the ground. For instance, if you signal towards your enemy that the worst thing that can possibly happen to you are military casualties, you actually make soldiers more vulnerable towards attacks on military bases. The other thing is, especially during counterinsurgency operations, if you really want to win the hearts and minds of the people, it's very difficult if you really are dressed as a ninja turtle, as one military officer in 1990 in Kosovo would say, because it's really difficult to make contact with the local people if you're wearing sunglasses and are strapped around with big armor around you. So these are really tough consequences, and we actually see also that it can make governments on the ground being so risk averse that they actually cause problems. We've seen it in Afghanistan and Iraq, also with the Germans, with the Kunduz airstrike, actually, that they thought they couldn't really, because they were so scared of causing military casualties that they weren't really going out there and making contact with the locals. But especially in counterinsurgency operations, makes it really difficult to assess the damage on the danger on the ground. Like, is this really an insurgent, or is it just some local people stealing gas from a tank? So I think these findings are really important on how the government thinks we perceive military casualties and how we actually perceive them, and hopefully it will make them less anxious to make. To have these negative policy consequences, because it is a risk of intervening in the first place. So it's not something that you can always, always can avoid.